Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're breaking down the 3 Sarah J. Maas series in the most simple way possible. Specifically for people who are not fantasy readers or are wanting to get into fantasy. Because I know firsthand, you take a look at the size of one of these books or you open it up and you see a map with a bunch of random locations and names and you immediately get overwhelmed and put it down. So if that's happening to you, watch this video because I'm here to get you comfortable with it and make you realize that you're gonna love these books. So we're gonna talk about what each of these series is about, what order I would read them in, and a few tips that will make the experience just way less intimidating. And a little disclaimer before we get into it, I'm not a fantasy reader. So this isn't going to be a detailed video giving you all the ins and outs of fantasy books because I don't know that. I've read these series, I've read Fourth Wing, and that's about it. So I'm no fantasy expert. Don't come for me if I say things that, I don't know, fantasy readers don't like. This is a for beginners, for non-fantasy readers video. Before picking these up, I did not think I was going to like them in the slightest. Then I finished the first book and I'm obsessed. Like, I genuinely think about these books quite often. So I think we can get you there too. So for context, and I'm sure you've seen these everywhere, but these are the 3 series. This one here is A Court of Thorns and Roses. It is currently, let's call it 4.5 books. This blue one here is a little novella, but additional books have recently been released. So we have a couple more to come, and we don't even know if that's going to be the end of this series. Next, the box set that we have here is Throne of Glass. It is a complete series. And how many books is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, it's upside down. I'm not going to change that now. So Throne of Glass is 8 books, complete series. Then up here we have Crescent City. These are gargantuan books, but that's okay. Currently the series is 3 books, more to come. We don't know when those are coming. So let's start with what kind of author is Sarah J. Maas. So she's a fantasy author, but from my research, her books are more romance, less like super detailed fantasy. I mean, they feel pretty detailed fantasy to me, but once again, I'm not a fantasy reader. They're very, very character driven, very emotional. You will feel connected to the characters in these books. And one important thing to know is the worlds do get more complex the more that you go on, which we will get into when I kind of speak specifically to the different series. But really, she's known for morally gray characters, slow burn romance, strong female main characters, which we love, and really, really immersive worlds. So with that, let's get into the first series, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you are not a fantasy reader, this is absolutely where I would start when it comes to Sarah J. Maas series. A Court of Thorns and Roses, I believe, is the most simple of the 3 series. The series follows Farah, who is a human who ends up intertwining herself with the Fae, who are the fantasy mythical creatures. I'm not going to give too many details because obviously there's a lot in here that I don't want to spoil, but just know that the main character is human and now she comes across a whole lot of non-humans. One thing that I always say when people are starting this series, you have to get through the first book, which is the red one here. It is honestly really like a Beauty and the Beast type retelling. But when you finish this first one, if you're not hooked, please, please, please just read A Court of Mist and Fury. If you're not hooked by the end of that one, then fine. But I am very confident you will be hooked after you read the second book in this series. So yeah, if you're going to start with one of these series, this is definitely the one I would start with. The world building is on the easier side. It's the most simple fantasy of the three. As I mentioned, I think simple is the best kind of way to describe it. Doesn't feel like there are a ton of little details that you have to remember. And so, yeah, it's generally the most accessible for new fantasy readers. And speaking of new fantasy readers, one thing that I wanted to mention at the beginning that I didn't is you will probably feel overwhelmed when reading these books. There's a lot of details, there's a lot of characters to remember, and that's okay. Even myself, like the last series I read was Crescent City, and reading those books, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm missing so much. And I was always Googling things or looking back at maps or trying to figure out, like, oh, who is who? And that's fine. So I will Google things throughout the book, or I'll have someone Google it for me to try and avoid like other types of spoilers. Um, After I finish one of these books or one of the series, typically I'm on Reddit or TikTok looking up explanations and theories. And a lot of times it's just little things that maybe I didn't put together because I'm not a fantasy reader that I'll find out afterwards. I'm like, oh my God, yeah. But it doesn't take away from the story. It's not like I miss huge chunks. It's kind of just little things that it's like, oh, cool. Like that makes sense. So don't let yourself feel too overwhelmed. It's okay. I think it's normal. Just get yourself through it, and kind of the more that you read, it's almost like practicing. Like the more that you read of these types of books, the more you'll understand and pick up on those little details. The second series that we have is this box set here, which is Throne of Glass, and it is personally my favorite of the three. The main character is an assassin who gets pulled into a competition to become the king's champion. Compared to ACOTAR, Throne of Glass is definitely more fantasy, more world building. It kind of feels like if this was grade 1, then this one is grade 2. Just a little bit more to follow. There are more characters, more locations, more political storylines, and the world kind of just keeps getting bigger and bigger as you make your way through the series. One thing that you've probably seen online that is pretty controversial about this series is there are multiple orders to read Throne of Glass. In my opinion, the best way to read it is Throne of Glass first and The Assassin's Blade third. The reason those two interchange is because The Assassin's Blade is actually a novella that takes place before Throne of Glass and the other books in this series. So some people prefer to read Assassin's Blade first because it kind of gives you some history on the main character. But I think reading it third kind of gives you more oomph to the storyline and feels a lot more emotional. So that's my recommendation is you read Throne of Glass first and Assassin's Blade third. So that way when you get to those novella kind of past stories, they're a bit more emotional and they'll hit you a bit harder. But with Throne of Glass, it doesn't stop there. So Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, they actually take place at the exact same time. So with those two books, you can do what's called a tandem read, which I highly recommend. Essentially, there's guides that you can find online that break down what chapter you need to read in Empire of Storms, and then at what point do you switch over to Tower of Dawn. So basically, you're going back and forth between both of the books. It's such a great way to read it because there's no really dull moments. Like you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think if you read them separately, Tower of Dawn might be a bit slow. So I highly recommend the tandem read. Yes, it can be a little bit intense carrying around two massive books and swapping back and forth. Personally, I just went through and sticky noted where I had to switch in between books. It worked for me and I loved it. And once again, this is by far my favorite series of Sarah J. Maas. Kingdom of Ash, the last book in the series, is possibly one of the best books I have ever read. I think about that book and this series regularly, and I read it 2 years ago now. I loved it so, 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 so much. So you should read it. Just please read it. Lastly, we have Crescent City, which is these 3 books here. And I'd say this series definitely feels a lot different than the other 2 series. This one, like I said, if this was grade 1 and this was grade 2, this one is like grade 8. Like we're jumping to high school almost. There's a lot more happening, a lot more characters. The world is a lot more complex. There are like a million different creatures and things happening. So there is a lot to keep track of in these books. I'm actually currently doing a reread of the 3rd one, House of Flame and Shadow. And there's so much that I'm picking up on now that I didn't pick up on before. It can really feel overwhelming. This one specifically, I was doing a lot of Googling, figuring out who's who and what am I reading and what is what. But regardless of kind of the complexities, it's still an incredible story that I loved. But that's just why I recommend you read it last out of the series, because then you have a little bit of a introduction into fantasy before you get into the complicated stuff. And without spoiling anything, this series is definitely where readers start to see some interconnections with the other series. So, as I mentioned, the order that I would read these 3 is ACOTAR first. It's the easiest entry to Sarah J. Maas's writing style and world building. Next, I would go to Throne of Glass. It's a bit more complex, but at that point, you'll be a bit more comfortable with the fantasy world building that happens within this series, and it's a bit bigger. And then lastly, I would go to Crescent City. It's definitely the most dense and complex of the 3 series, so I think it's best that you read them once you're familiar with the world building and how everything works. So I've given some tips throughout, but I want to reiterate kind of some tips for non-fantasy readers, because these books, yes, they are insanely popular, but they can feel incredibly overwhelming. So my number 1 tip is don't stress about remembering everything. These books throw a lot of names, characters, things at you, and you're going to forget them. That's natural. But they're going to come up again and again and again, and eventually you'll figure it out, you'll remember what's going on, and you'll start to piece things together. To go along with that, the first 100 pages are always going to feel overwhelming. That's when the author is introducing all of the new characters, all of the locations, and there's a lot being thrown at you. Just get through that 100 pages, and then things will slowly start to fall into place. And then lastly, as I mentioned, it's totally normal to look things up. I am looking things up all the time. I'm asking people, do you remember who this is? Do you remember what this is? And that's okay. There are so many things in these books that you're just not going to remember. It's okay to look things up. So that's my beginner's guide to Sarah J. Maas and her 3 series. Hopefully this helps you feel a little bit more confident about starting these series. I am very confident that once you start, you're not going to want to put them down. As I mentioned, I did not think I was going to like these books at all. I had never read fantasy before, and now I'm absolutely obsessed. Yes, they're a big commitment. They're big books and there's a lot of them, but I'm telling you, once you start, you're not going to want to stop, and don't let yourself get overwhelmed at the beginning. Just get through it, and I promise you it will be worth it. If you read all of these already and you just decided to watch this video for fun, I want to know, what is your favorite series, and do you agree that people should start with ACOTAR, or do you think they should start with something else? And if you're just getting into them, let me know if you're going to start with ACOTAR or if you're going to switch things up. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.